Welcome to the PropCast. My name is Ryan, aka Make a Prop.
Oh, okay, that's where I go. Okay, yeah.
It's your turn now. It's been a while. It's okay.
It's Ashton from Ashton Warrior Props, and today we are going to be working on the podcast.
The podcast, yes.
Yes.
This is the first episode that has cameras. You can actually see us now. You're going to see all my stims as I play with my hands. I apologize on my end for the lighting. You're going to hear me complain about it a lot because I'm, a stickler for that kind of things. Those kind of things. But yeah, it's been a little while, which it feels like every single episode of the PropCast, we start by saying it's been a little while.
To be fair, though, we always get in like this mindset. We're like, all right, we're on the grind. We're going to record a lot this time. And then we don't.
And then we don't.
And then we don't.
But we have had talks where I'm not going to say anything to jinx us, but we're hoping we will. That's all. That's all we're going to say. Now, the big thing that's different is I'm not in my shop. I'm just sitting kind of at my computer, but you are working from the shop, which is cool. So are you able to talk about what you're working on or?
This one, no, believe it or not, I'm able to talk about what I'm working on for a rarity.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss this time. I know you and I had talked a little bit about, I really wanted to talk about like doing this as a job. I'm going to pull my hair down because
glorious.
Yeah, that looks a lot better.
Welcome, Tarzan.
So, that's a big thing I'm starting to get a lot of questions about is because if you don't know, this is, I call this my job because, well, it kind of is. I do make money doing this. Granted, not a lot. Nobody makes a lot of money right now.
Right now.
But I wanted to discuss, like commissions, how we make our money, why we do it the way we do, why we charge the way we do.
Yep.
Just because there's been a lot of talk lately about, oh, well, these people charge too much. This is what they charge. And for those of you who don't know, I've lately started getting a lot of, I cannot discuss legally. I am not allowed to discuss what companies that I have had to sign NDAs for and what jobs I've been offered. But I've had a lot of gaming companies and a lot of film work be offered to me that I'm just not allowed to discuss. There is several that I can discuss and some that I can't. But it's just really it's kind of gotten me in the mood to talk about what this is as a job.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very loaded kind of question of how do you do props? I think also the one thing that I want to mention is that it's a very common question that and discussion that happens in our Discord or your Discord, I should say. But which is, if you want to join, it's in the description. But a lot of people are aspiring prop makers, or some of them are phenomenal prop makers and aspiring full-time prop makers to do it for a living. And I want to start with a bit of a disclosure around this, which is that as of right now, which we are recording July 2022, technically neither Liam nor myself are technically full-time prop makers.
So I'll break that down. We put full-time hours into it.
Oh yeah.
We still both work a day job.
Yes.
Eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, that will change.
Yeah.
Especially, again, I keep getting these larger contracts. I do want to move into the content creation because I really enjoy teaching. That's why I love doing the tutorials, and I help people out frequently at like no cost. I will Skype people and help them out if they need to, and that's part of why there's a big assistance section in the Discord, because I like helping people. But I do want to move into content creation so I can have more time to do more commissions.
And I think that leads into the first part of our discussion, what it should be. Which is that it is very rare, if not impossible, at least in today's climate, working for yourself. I'm clarifying, not in industry, doing just prop making enough income off of just commissions and things like that. It is like the 0.01% of people do that.
That's what my buddy Scott told me. You don't go into prop making for the money. It's just how it is.
It is, yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, there are some people, like I have a friend of mine who works in props in the film industry, where they work for a production company, and that is what they do. But working in the film industry is very, very different from working on cosplay and individual props, because film industry stuff sometimes can be really exciting if you get a sick job. You get a job at a workshop, sick. You might be working on some cool stuff. More often than not, like for my friend that I know, she is, mocking up, like making toys look weathered for a kid's bedroom set, and that is what she's doing for 8 hours a day for an entire week.
Yeah.
It is not an enjoyable, well, I shouldn't say it's not enjoyable, but it is not
Enjoyable,
the
but
same. It's not
it's
the
not
same as what
what you
we're
and I are
doing.
after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing that a lot of people, I use the hashtags cosplay, and in the tutorials, Ryan puts cosplay um
The tags.
in the tags. But I don't like to consider myself a cosplayer, and there's nothing against cosplaying. I think it's fun, and as soon as COVID's not overly prevalent, and my son isn't 3.5 weeks old, or tomorrow he's 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
Then I'll have to go back to conventions. But I prefer costumer because I don't want to do this just for conventions. As a lot of you know, and maybe Ryan, you can throw up some pictures of the Alva teaser trailer. We want to work on our own films,
Yeah.
not necessarily
That's
be.
kind of our end goal.
Yeah.
I think is fair to say for you and I. Like, you and I have had this discussion so many times of kind of, okay, what's the plan? What are we gonna do? And what it always comes down to is, again, you mentioned content creation earlier. And it does always come down to that, where it's like, okay, we want to be able to make stuff that has our props in it and has our things in it. And that, where we can make money, whether it's again, it wouldn't be making money off of the films, but doing content creation that funds our passion, which is
Which is the
creating films and things like that around it. So all that to say, that's not meant to discourage any of you listening from pursuing prop making as an income, because the fact of the matter is, it is still a source of income for Liam and myself.
has saved my skin more than once in the last year. Like
Yep.
there have been several times where just again the world economy right now sucks. And there's been several times where I have randomly thrown up on my Instagram story that I was like, "Hey, I'm accepting a commission," and sometimes it has been in the past, not very much like recently, uh, to pay for a bill or like
Yep.
cover a grocery run, or with gas right now,
Yeah.
it takes a lot to fill up a vehicle right now. So I'm very guilty of taking a commission just to pay a bill.
Yeah, no,
Um,
100%. And that's something that prop making is great for, especially once you develop a reputation and a following, especially like you have, Liam, um, for that, for like, a very reliable prop maker that people can reach out to, and all that stuff. That's fantastic. That's great. It does take some time to build up that following and build up that trust. If it's your first time posting about taking commissions, sometimes it can be a little bit disheartening when you first post about it and you don't get 100 requests. Before we jump into that, though, I do want to talk about what I just said, which is commissions. So we're talking about making money off of prop making, and there are several different ways to do that.
yeah,
One of the primary ones, this is usually the biggest money maker, is through custom commissions.
yep.
And that is something that you do pretty much almost entirely.
This year, in fact, the only thing that is behind me right now that is for me is the Alva helmet. Everything
Yeah,
else has a new home.
yeah, has
Um,
has been
uh,
commissioned.
yeah, so and there it's a blessing and a curse, because until recently, I don't have like you can look behind me. I don't have any more NCR Ranger stuff behind me anymore because it either got sold or commissioned and taken away. And at one point, I had 6 in my house for a film that we were working on. But people would be like, "Hey, I want an NCR Ranger suit and I need it quick." They're like, "All right, cool. Here's a price tag and take this suit. I'll make
Yeah,
another one eventually." So again, it is a blessing and a curse because you rarely get to keep your own work.
yeah. Which
But
sometimes really sucks. So for my most recent commission, I had a prop that I made that I was very, very happy with. I was very proud of, and it kind of broke my heart to ship that away, because that it was a fair amount of work. And the key thing is that if it was easy, then I'll just make another one. but
No,
usually the ones that you're proud of aren't the easy ones. Sometimes they are, but they're usually
like
not.
I was talking about, I recorded the Alva armor
Yeah, the
breakdown
walkthrough.
today. And I was clocking in my hours of what I had in that. And I won't ever sell my suit because I've put close to 500 hours into that
Yep.
suit, from templating. Like, granted, if I did it again at the same professional film
Yeah.
level one is, I could do it in like less time, but I don't want to
Doesn't mean,
because
I was about to say, yeah, it doesn't mean
yeah,
you want to, right?
no.
So that is something that is one of the big things for that's one of the primary ways of making income. Now, the pro of that is that it can be quick. Especially you can get very what? Why are you making a
My
face like that?
was that the Discord? Oh, that was somebody else in the Discord. It just
Oh, okay.
changed.
I
My
just
bad.
saw you spin and look at me. I was like, don't get angry that I said it can be quick. They can be quick in terms of you can take small commissions. They don't have to be massive ones. Um, and I actually tend to be an advocate for the smaller commissions, especially in the beginning, which means it can just be, one helmet, one sword, things like that, depending on
I,
what you're doing.
I've got the current rule, that I'm not taking any more full suits for
Yeah.
non-company clients at a time, or
Oh,
like
they are
not all
so
together.
much work.
Like the Goblin Slayer guy, he wants the
Mhm.
whole suit, but I told him, I was like, look, we can do the helmet now, and then once I ship you the helmet, then we'll go to like the chest and the
Yeah.
pauldrons, and then yeah. So I
Yeah.
promise my isn't also like this poofy. It's just because of the headset.
It is. I can confirm it is that poofy. Anyways, but yeah, so that is the now the downside of that, I would say one of them is that if you're doing the smaller commissions, you're not going to be making as much money. Uh, Two is that getting those commissions in the beginning, as I mentioned, can be tricky. If you are not an established maker who takes commissions like Liam, you just hit what 7,000 followers on your Instagram,
Yeah,
and that is primarily, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that's where people reach out and the most and just
yeah,
DM you and kind of say, hey, I want you to make this thing. How much? And
yeah.
that's a very common thing. You can have a website that has a commissions form and such, but more often than not, someone's just going to want to DM you and be like, hey, how much?
Yeah, I get emails from time to time, and it's funny because I have the website and I have the commission section on the website. Um, and then more often than not, they'll email me. And I'm like, just DM me.
Yeah.
We continue this there.
No, that's fair.
Um,
Whereas I'm the opposite. I can't stand DMing. If someone DMs me and I give them a quote and it's gonna go through, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna need you to email me because DMs get lost so easily for me. I forget about them. I'm a very ADHD person, and those tend to emails for work, Instagram DMs are for chaos and memes and
you
those
have a
things.
personal page. I don't have a personal page.
I have,
That's
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, oops, Siri's talking to me. Um, yeah, so that is kind of the con is that initial getting established for commissions can be a little bit tricky.
there are two cons, and it's something I'm trying to figure out how I want to steer this conversation. Do I want to go like yeah, okay, I do. I want to go from like the beginning steps of getting a commission to
Mm.
the final steps of
Sure, yeah.
like where I'm at with this. And so like getting you caught up to like my experience level in terms of like framing. Um so yeah, you go ahead. I literally want to
No,
take this
it's
from the
okay. So
beginning.
yeah, absolutely. So we'll go through that process in just a second. I'm going to mention just before we'll dive really deep into commissions, and we can talk about your process. I can talk about my process for pricing and then actually crafting and everything like that, and then shipping off. The other thing that I want to talk about is the other methods of income if you're trying to get started, as a prop maker and making, whether it's a living or just doing it as a side hustle. The other one is doing selling casts of models that you've made. This is one of those ones that is a very unreliable long-term thing
It's
because
a
you will
big
have some
step.
props. Yeah, you will have some props that just are they'll last a really long time in terms of the love for them. And but one month you might get no orders for them, and another you might get 18,
Yeah.
and kind of like your Estes flasks.
Well, and that's
Um,
like I made like that was the most wealthy I was, and I'm not saying I was
no,
wealthy,
no,
but
no, but I know what you
that
mean.
was the
Yeah.
most well off I was when I was doing the Etsy cast. But that that's all I was doing.
That's
Like
all you were doing.
I would do 20 orders a day,
Well,
and
I
it
was
was
there with
it,
you in
yeah, no,
November. I was
it was
helping, you know.
bonkers.
It was literally we would wake up, go downstairs, spend the entire morning pouring like eight molds, and then
Mhm.
set a timer for like, okay, this can be demolded in this time. The moment it's demolded, you have to be finishing it while we're casting more because you had so many orders to fulfill in such little time. The other side of that is that you might put your heart and soul into making this beautiful mold and cast, and you have to, you have to invest in silicone, which is not cheap,
It
in
just went up.
resin, which is not cheap, and all these things that are only seeming to get more expensive. And you
I'm
might do
using
that.
my gold mine because I have 2 gallons over there.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah.
2 gallons that I have not opened.
Yeah. And that's right. You might do that. And then you sell one.
Yeah.
I had a good friend of mine, Mythic Props, on Instagram. He built this beautiful Reaper shotgun from Overwatch. I've seen the master. It is stunning. It is massive. He scratch built it from like MDF and Sintra and styrene. It is gorgeous. And he was like, okay, I've put my soul into this. This is fantastic. I'm 100% going to mold this and sell casts of it. And he spent like, I think it was at the time, and this was years ago, keep in mind, at the time, I think he spent $500 or $600 on silicone and resin and everything. And he didn't get a single order.
Hmm.
And again, and that wasn't because it was a bad quality prop. It's
It
because
just
right when
didn't.
he finished the mold and everything, Overwatch died
Yep.
and he had no control over that. And that's another thing as well is sometimes you don't have control over the climate, you know?
Yeah.
So if you make a prop that you love, just because it's incredible doesn't mean it's going to sell really well. And that's
Well,
the
and
important thing
the
for
other
that.
thing about casts, and doing a large quantity is the origin, especially if doing something that's based on a video game or a movie. Some producing agencies
Yep.
don't care. Like from what I can tell, the like FromSoft doesn't really care. They, in
Mhm.
fact, Grant, I was hired by FromSoft. I did I
Yeah.
helped Steve with the armor for the Elden Ring release. So I've directly worked with FromSoft before. And they don't seem to mind, as far
Yeah.
as I know. Whereas Disney can get
Disney's
really
famous. Yeah.
they can get really anal about it. So it's something like, don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, very much so. Well, even DC apparently, like literally yesterday, was cracking down on a bunch of sellers on Etsy and sending cease and desists for everything from Batman helmets to Green Lantern stuff and all that. Basically, all their intellectual property. They sent out like a huge like they were cracking down on orders. And that's something that, a lot of people will say like, oh yeah, then you just, you can just rename it, but like, it doesn't matter. They'll still do it. So
If
you have to be really
they
careful with
want their
that, where it's
money,
like,
they're gonna get their money.
well, yeah, well, and that's the issue is that where a lot of people's answer to something like, well, you have to create for the climate, where it's like, okay, well, what's something that never dies? Okay, I'll make something from Star Wars. Well, great, you might make a stormtrooper helmet that you're planning on casting and selling. 3 days after you post it, you'll get a cease and desist. Like it is. So you have to be careful. You have to do your research. Make sure you're not going to get in trouble for what you're
It's not
selling.
saying don't make something from a licensed property,
Mhm.
but just know you're not going to get rich doing it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
like I can make countless Boba Fett's if somebody asks me. That's no problem. If
Yep.
somebody comes to me directly and says, "Hey, build me a Boba Fett suit," I can
Sure.
build
Yeah.
20 of them.
Yeah.
But
But if you're selling,
I cannot come out right and say, "Hey, I'm selling these."
yeah,
Like if that makes any sense. Like I can be a
you
pro.
can't be a vendor for these things basically. Or at least you can't, like, again, it's tricky because there are some people that I know where like that is their thing. They have beautiful casts of boba, like Red Bow Props is like really well known for their I think it's Red Bow Props is really well known for their Mandalorian casts, including Fett. If it's not Red Bow, I apologize. But again, they're known for that, and I don't believe they've had any issue. I also think they sell through their own site. They don't sell on Etsy.
Yep.
And again, they're not licensed. They don't advertise themselves as licensed. And they've been okay. But there are some other people that I know who have gotten in huge trouble within a day, and it's all over the place. You just have to be careful. You have to be prepared for that because, as Liam said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If that if this is if you are relying on that item selling to make your rent and
Yeah.
you get a cease and desist, you're screwed. You
Yeah.
know, you have to be really careful. So the last method of income that we'll talk about before we dive into our commission process is the hardest one, which is passive income. Passive income with prop making is extremely difficult and almost at times not worth it, in my opinion. So the most common one is selling blueprints.
Yep.
So Liam, you don't sell blueprints; you give yours away for free.
So I used to, because at the time, and I still do. I put a lot of time and effort into my blueprints and my templates, just because it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time that I could be working on a commission and doing something that makes money. But at the same time, I think back to when I had started this, and like I think back to 2014, my very first costume I made out of foam in 2014, right after the release of Dark Souls 2. There were no templates for what I did. I literally went through so much money in foam just doing stuff, and I was like, you know what? I wish somebody had given away free templates. That's what I'm going to do. I don't think knowledge should come behind a paywall. So that's why
agree. Yeah.
I do things for free nowadays. And people are like, oh, well, aren't you afraid that somebody's going to learn how to build like what you do for commissions? And no, I'm not saying somebody's not going to be as good as me. But if I give you the template, you can learn. And then one day you can produce a fantastic looking piece, if not on your first try. But in a manner, it doesn't threaten me. Like if somebody even takes my template, revamps it, and posts another tutorial using my template that they've revamped, go for it, because maybe I missed something. Maybe I did something that can be improved on. Does not offend me either way, like one way or the other. What does matter is the final product, and that can vary whether you have a blueprint or not. So like I'm never offended by like the blueprint like thieving. I know some people get very upset about that. Like the Goblin Slayer one, I went through like 4 PEP files just because I'm not familiar with it. So I don't have like I don't know a whole lot about it. So I was going through PEP files to get references, and then I sculpted one. I bought a template, viewed it just to get a base, and then I found a PDO that somebody had posted for free. I made a new 3D model, printed it, and did exactly what I'm doing now. Was I made this model, 3D printed it, and taped it, and created a 2D template. So again, it's something that regardless, there is a lot of skill and a lot of time and effort that goes into this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing as well is that everything you just talked about, you know, time and skill and effort. And then if your template is more than $5, no one's going to buy it, or at least not anymore. Because templates are so much easier to get nowadays for almost anything. That there's no reason for someone to spend $10 to $15 unless it's like, you know, if it's a whole foam suit of armor that someone's made that you're like, oh yeah, this is going to do it. That's different. But for me, if I'm looking for a template for something and I see that it's more than $5, I'm like, screw off. I'm not paying, you know, $20 for this PDF of this thing.
Granted, I'd say it's different too than getting like a 3D model and paying $25.
It's extremely different.
Because with a 3D model, that is close to the finished project.
Yeah.
All the hard work has been done.
Yeah. Versus a 2D sheet of paper, essentially, you know? And that's one way. The other is with, in terms of passive income, is with what you just mentioned, which is also selling things like if you are a 3D modeler and you're good at it, selling your 3D models as principal props. I can tell you myself, I have spent several $100s, if not over 1,000 on files for 3D printing at this point personally, because that is one of my preferred ways of making. I just 3D printing, and I have done that for my most recent commission. I did that, and that is a very normal thing for me. And if you're good at that, then cool, and you're comfortable selling your models, make some models in your spare time that, especially again, if they're popular, throw them up on Etsy, or if you have a Shopify store or whatever it is, or you know, Squarespace, do it on that. Awesome. You know, if you can do that, it's basically like if you have files that you can sell that are, you know, reasonable for selling, and you can sell them for a reasonable price, then do it. There's no reason not to.
I typically don't buy 3D models because I'm one of those people that like if I didn't do it 100% myself, I don't know, it unnerves me. I like to know that I can.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, you know how much of a pain in the ass I am about
Yes, you are a massive
that.
pain in my ass.
But
Whereas
so
for
I
me, I don't have the time half the time to do. If a model already exists, I'm not going to waste my time. And again, that's to clarify. I'm not saying you're wrong in doing that. I'm just saying for my personal work style, the way my life is, I don't have time to sit down and learn how to scratch build a certain model if it's already been made.
you know how to though. That's the
Oh
difference. You know
yeah.
how to
Oh
model
yeah.
stuff.
9 times out of 10, I can make a model. Does that mean I want to? 9 times out of 10, no. Like, I
Yep.
don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but that's how that's kind of how I function.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we've covered passive income. We've covered selling through castings, which is creating a master and then doing molds and casts and commissions. So let's go through the really long one, which is the commission process. And I'll let you go ahead. So let's just say somebody messages you on Instagram, DMs you, and says, "I want you to make this helmet or this armor. How much? What would your process
So,
be?"
so and I hate that general question of how much to do this
Oh,
because it's
always,
always
but it's
different.
always the question we're asked.
Yeah. So typically in the short version, my algorithm for this is materials plus X amount an hour. That X is determined on your skill and your experience. I had this conversation with a kid. I think he was like he was in between 15 and 20. Um,
This
like
is this is you being the prop maker, by the way. He's
yeah,
not the
maybe
person
yeah.
commissioning.
Yeah, so the X is the prop maker's skill point, and experience. So I had a kid message me. He was like, "Hey, so my buddy he wants to commission this prop from me. How much would you charge?" I'm like, "How much would I charge, or how much would you charge?" He's like, "Well, I need to know how much I charge," and it always makes me feel like an asshole with this question, and I get this question a lot because I hate talking about myself. I was just talking to you about I hate doing resumes because I hate talking about myself.
Yeah.
But I've been doing this for a while and I've worked in the professional setting a few times. I still have a hard time saying I'm professional. So Ryan, is that a professional film quality prop?
Yes, it is. Oh my God. 8 times. You've gotten a little bit better, but like 40 times a week it used to be that I would just get a text from Liam out of the blue saying, "Man, is my work professional?" And I'm like, "You literally did a job for FromSoft. Yes, your work is professional."
But yeah, so back to the task at hand here.
Yes.
So the kid was like, "Oh, so how much would you charge?" So I told him how much I would charge for it, and it was a pretty elaborate prop, and I was like, it'd be close to, for me, it'd be about a $500 prop, and that's a single prop. And that says I do have a rule. I don't charge average Joe. I don't want to say that and sound like derogatory, but when a company comes after me, my rates go up
Yeah.
because they can afford my professional rate, and that's not saying a lot of people can't. But when a company comes to me, my rates go really high. If an
Well,
average Joe
companies
comes up
often
to
have
me,
a significantly higher budget
yes, but I,
because
I feel really bad if I charge somebody um, an exorbitant amount for what will be a great product.
Mhm.
Like I've always told people this too. If I was filthy rich and I didn't have to worry about paying bills, I would make stuff for people for free because I just enjoy making things for people. I love the client's reaction when I send them something and they're like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, this is the coolest thing I own."
I think it's also really important to mention though that the difference between one person commissioning you and a company commissioning you is often that the company commissioning you will result in the company making money off of what they're commissioning you for.
Yeah,
And that is a huge factor in how much money you are charging because basically it's like, all right, how much money are they going to make off of this? Or whether it is directly or it is through sales that they make because of this or anything like that. I'm going to charge them more because if they're going to make 200, like let's say a massive
I'll
company,
make
they're going
some
to
money
make
off of that
thousand
too.
dollars of this. I'm gonna charge them 10 or 15. Whereas if it's a guy who is just super passionate about this video game or this movie or something and really wants to own this helmet, I'm not going to charge him $8,000 for it. I
No,
might
and that's
charge him
exactly.
$600. That's the difference.
I do want to get that out of the way real quick. Yeah, so company work is different from average client work.
Very different.
Very,
But
very
in the
different.
beginning as a prop maker, it's very rare you start with company work.
Yeah,
you
almost
usually
never do.
most people do individual work for their entire career. Most people, unless you level up to either working in the industry or if you get contracts with clients with like company clients.
Yeah. But anyway, so this guy so how much do I charge for it? And I was trying to explain to him without hurting his feelings. I was like, so I'm not saying you're not a good maker, but how long have you been doing this? And he's like, I just started. So I'm going to charge him $500. I'm like, dude, you can't solely for the matter of your experience.
Yep.
Like, so for some reference, when I started this, the first commission I ever took, I charged only the materials. It was a guy I worked at GameStop with. He was like, hey, I heard you were getting into like the cosplay scene. What would you charge me? It was actually the very first NCR Ranger I ever made back in 2017. My buddy Eli. I was like, hey, so how much would you charge me? And I couldn't think of a price off the top of my head. So I went home, called my dad and I was like, hey, so dad, like what I'm not, business savvy yet. What do I do about this? And he goes, you're just doing this. So right now you only need experience. That's more valuable than cash to you at this point. And he's got a point. Like without any experience, I cannot make more cash. So I charged him just materials, and I hear there were several times he's actually kept most of my first edition props. Next time you're in the States, Ryan, I'll have to call him.
Yeah, I'd love to see those.
He kept a lot of them, and then he buys a lot of my new stuff now too.
Yeah.
But I only charged him the materials, and that's kind of what I told this kid. I was like, so you're not going to like this answer, but you should really only charge for the materials and get some experience under your belt. The kid actually put together a pretty decent prop, but for being your first like commission.
Well, yeah, and so like again, that is a classic thing. Is if you that's a classic debate, especially amongst people who are people who aren't makers, who don't understand why. Okay, like hey, why would I buy this, crocheted blanket from you for $800 when I could go to this guy and he said he'll make it for 200? And it's like, well, because you're paying for my experience. That's a big thing usually, which allows us, because one, we'll be able to usually make it in less time. Usually, depending on the prop, we'll be able to make it in less time, and we'll be able to do a better job. And you can have fast and good.
You can have fast, good,
or you can have fast and cheap,
yeah,
which won't be good. Or you can have good, cheap, and it'll be super slow. Personally,
I've actually decided that you can only have one. So
I was just about to say, personally, I don't believe in the last one, which is good and
you can
cheap.
have good, fast, or cheap, because if somebody wants something good, they have to pay out of their, like they're going to have to dip into their savings. If somebody wants quick, then they're going to have to pay for my time to rush it out the door. And if they want something cheap, it's not going to be good and it's not going to get done, because at that point
I think it's really important to mention that. So for me, when I get one of those kind of famed DMs or emails or anything like that, and this applies to, so from my point of view, a lot of this is client work for video and such. I would say right now, I do more work currently doing video projects than I do prop making projects, because I'm a freelance cinematographer and editor. And so the first thing that I usually say, again, if in the beginning, my response used to be, well, what's your budget? Because it would be okay. Like, that was a very, in the beginning, which is that. And when you were just getting started and someone says, hey, how much would this cost? It's like, well, what's your budget? Because and again, there's some people who get really annoyed by that, where they're like, just tell me how much it's going to cost. And there are some people who are like, I was hoping it'd be like $300. And you might hear that number and you might be like, ugh. 300 for an entire suit of armor? That's insane. Or you might be like, 300, I was going to tell him 150. If the person gets angry for it, for you asking that, then it's basically just saying like, hey, I wasn't trying to cause any offense. I want to see if I can, work around your budget. And then usually you have to give them a quote. But also, you are under no obligation ever to give them a quote immediately. Nope. And that's really important. It is a very, very normal thing to say, hey, because the first thing you need to, I'll get back to you. Yeah. Because the first thing you really need to do before you ever reply to or before you ever give them a quote or anything, is you need to actually sit down and ask yourself, is this a project that I want to do?
My kind of like awful thing that I do is if somebody randomly DMs me, and like, hey, how much for this? Typically, if it's somebody that just drops into my DMs and says, how much for this? Like, doesn't say, hey, doesn't like try to, I go through their profile to see if there's somebody I want to take as a client, because there are some people who I have declined because I know I won't make them happy because there's nothing I can do to make them happy.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be one of those people that, if you don't respond immediately or whatever, you're under no obligation to take the commission anyway, or like
Never.
either.
And that's one thing as well. I think we are kind of all over the place. Again, I'm a very ADHD person, so I kind of struggle to keep a straight conversation, especially
I'm
between.
about to steer it back. I'm about to steer it
Yeah,
back.
but what all I was gonna say was that, but is a really important skill that is very difficult to develop in the beginning when you're wanting to make money is learning to say no to certain commissions. That is a skill that I am so grateful that Liam has finally started to learn. Which is that, and because
Does that look like a butt?
especially in
It
prop
kind of looks
making.
like a butt.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Looks like a butt. In especially in circumstances around prop making where passion really does play a part in how your art appears. If you don't give a damn about what you're making, it will show. It will show. There again, you can get good at hiding it because you get really good at making in general, but you will hate working on that, and that is the quickest way to fall out of love with prop making or whatever art form you're doing, is if you accept every commission and hate the work that you're doing.
Well, that's what like I kind of like that. My next batch of commissions is all stuff that I really am passionate about, which I'm really excited. I'm very fortunate for that. Anywho, so I'm going to steer this back
Sure.
to commission discussion because it's something, again, I know a lot of people ask me, so I do want to get it answered.
Sure.
But recently, with the economic climate of the whole world, I've noticed that I don't want to sound like a haughty asshole here, but a lot of people cannot afford me. And that's because I had one quality, and that was it will be my best work. I will lose money if I have to before it goes out the door and is not professional level or the best that I can possibly do. But I've recently decided I can't keep doing that because, like for instance, if you want to, I added it up for what I charge hourly, which is still not a whole lot. It is still significant. My average Joe hourly rate is nowhere near what my company client rate is. So I was adding it up for how much I did for Alva. If I charge even my average Joe rate between the real leather, the real linen, there are metal pieces to it. There's plastic. There's rivets.
Well, the
There's
time you spend on the paint job, everything, like that. Yeah.
the paint job alone between materials and labor would be about $1,000
Yeah.
because it took me forever to get good at it.
And that would be if you were shipped an already built and sealed thing of Alva armor for you to paint that. It'd be at least $1,000. Yeah.
Because it takes so much time. And again, you will see when you see some of these up close images, everything on there is done intentionally.
Yeah.
There's not a single inch of that armor that I didn't make sure looked the way it did.
Yeah.
But so that leads me into what I've started doing recently is it kind of breaks down to the whole, you can have good, you can have fast, you can have cheap. Because I had one client who was like, hey, I want something that looks exactly like your Alva. But fucking eating my hair. But it was like, hey, this is the suit I want, and I want it with the exact same paint job as your Alva armor. What would you charge me? And I gave him the number, and he goes, dude, I can't afford that. And I was like, okay, so a lot of that comes from the finish work. So are you using this in a film setting, or do you want a film quality prop, something that is professional in film quality, or do you want something that you can wear to a convention and win a cosplay contest with? It's like, I just want something to wear to a convention.
Yep.
So I've recently started developing the three kinds of quality. There's Halloween, there's convention, and then there's professional and film level. And I get
And
a wide.
that's from lowest to highest.
lowest to highest. And a lot of people are like, so what's Halloween level? Halloween level is October 15th. My 10-year-old nieces and nephews come up to me and they're like, hey, this character that I didn't want to be last week, well, now I want to be this character. And we have a weekend, we throw the armor together, we throw a can of spray paint on it, and it will last through Halloween, and then they're going to need another one. That's what Halloween quality is. It will get you through the thing that you're supposed to do. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to convey what you want it to be, and it'll look decent, but that's what it is. It's not going to be something that you're going to wear 1,000 times, and like it's solely there to do its job. It's a workhorse.
Yeah.
And then you and I were talking about, you were here when I was working on some of the stuff that I was working on, is convention quality. And what I like to do for that, and that's typically something that'll be like, maximum. Well, I don't want to say maximum because again, it's different. There's no one piece answer for, like, if somebody says how much for a whole suit of armor, what suit of armor, like what suit of armor and what materials do you want? But yeah, convention quality is more that there will be finer details. It will be wearable. It will be wearable for several occasions. It could probably win you a cosplay contest if you want. But eventually you may need a repair on it, or you may have to adjust it or upgrade it later. And then professional and film quality would be, i.e. my Alva, my original Ranger, like the Elden Ring suit, something that will last, that you can leave in a display box. That
Well,
will
the biggest thing as well is that holds up
Yeah.
on camera.
And holds up on camera.
That's a huge one, which sounds a lot easier than it actually is. Especially as somebody who filmed out your Alva suit, Alva just looked even more real on camera. I have had the exact opposite. I've seen the suits. Well, heck, you and I have watched movies where we've been like, oh my God, that is rough. Like that is not, that is not what that's supposed to look like. And yeah, that's totally fair. And so far we're at, is determining whether or not you want to make it, and then figuring out what your pricing is going to be. And pricing usually comes down to material cost plus your hourly wage. Hourly wage, because then the question comes of how many hours per prop. That will come with experience. That you will look at a piece, and what will happen is that you will make some people. So a friend of mine does all of his planning beforehand for a quote, where he will literally like break down on paper, okay, this, the scope of this gun, it will probably take me approximately 8 hours. This is going to take me this much. Okay, that's a total of 40 hours. I know Liam is the kind of person, for the most part, that you mostly, unless it's a bigger company, you do it in your head, where you're just kind of like, okay, this, it's going to take me about 40 hours, 40 times this plus this much material. It's going to be about $600, and then you send that off.
To be fair, there's not going to be, if you get a reputable maker to make you a full suit, expect more than $600. Like,
to be clear, when I'm dropping the number $600, one, it's an arbitrary number, but also, but also, like, that wouldn't be, good Lord, that wouldn't be for a suit of armor. Honestly, like, you're lucky to get like a beauty finished primo like helmet for that.
That is what one helmet that I'm currently working on was, and that was, he was like, oh, just don't do the lights, don't do all the electronics in it. He goes, just make the big cool helmet it's intricately detailed. But that was it. That's the one part. Like,
it's expensive, but again, you have to. It comes with, like, Liam and I've been doing this. I've been doing prop making for. If and again, I am the kind of person where I don't believe in the whole you only start tracking years once you are an adult. I've been working on props since I was 6 years old. So technically, I've been doing prop making for 16 years. And so like, I am not saying, I don't say to someone like, okay, 16 years of experience, I work for $100 an hour. No, I'm not an idiot, but if I'm able to make something in a very short amount of time to an extremely high quality, I'm allowed to charge more per hour. That's kind of what permits that. Whereas if you are a beginner and a single plain longsword is going to take you 20 hours to make, you can't charge $40 an hour for that. Like, that's not cool.
Like, thing for consumers to remember too, materials are expensive.
Yeah, especially now.
It may not be hard plastic, but it doesn't look like foam. It looks like real metal. It'll
Yep.
do the professional job, and a lot of Hollywood is using that and still paying $25,000 for a
Yep.
suit that's made out of foam or plastic.
Yep. And also
A
again,
lot of
like
it comes down to the paint. Like my God, I just restocked on paint. I ordered 3 bottles of paint and I spent $300 yesterday.
hey, you and I was complaining to you the other day because literally in Canada, Plastidip is absurdly expensive right now. I was working on a commission. I had to seal a suit of armor, and it wasn't even like a huge suit or anything. I had to use 2 cans of Plastidip. Those 2 cans of Plastidip cost me $50, which is insanely expensive to seal. I know $50 might not sound a lot compared to, let's say the whole armor cost, arbitrary number, $600.
Because you weren't going, you were doing con quality.
I was doing con quality, and I was like, this is $50 for
like
just for sealing this. Whereas before I used to be able to budget like $25, for 2 cans of plastic.
Because $50 is a good texture for that helmet.
Yeah.
Because of how much went into that texture and on the ceiling.
Exactly. So that's something to always keep in mind. And if you are not a prop maker, but you are a person who is hoping to commission someone for props and maybe looking to understand a little bit more of why it's expensive, first off, good on you. But second off, that often those costs, like, keep in mind, like, you're complaining about gas prices and such. Those prices are applying to our craft as well. The economy fucking sucks. Like it's brutal in Canada and the States. It's a mess. Prices are only going up. I can't even get HD.
You saw me fill up my truck twice and had to pull money out of.
And had to pull money out of your savings account. Like it's nuts. So that's something very much to keep in mind. So, okay, and the other big thing that I want to talk about, because this is something that you and I have had an experience with recently, and we obviously won't name names. We won't really talk about it too much for privacy reasons, but let's talk about shipping and how we calculate for shipping and why there are restrictions for shipping.
Okay, so shipping, I don't ever want to throw the I have more experience, but I no longer take international orders for regular clients because I have lost close to $6,000.
Yep.
In very recent memory. This year alone, I've lost more than that shipping just in the country. Like for when I shipped the Elden Ring armor, I paid for overnight shipping. It took 3 days to get there.
Yep.
And they needed it within that 3-day time limit. So shipping, when I calculate shipping price, typically if it's a small prop that I know is going to be cheap or not cheap, but not going to cost a lot in shipping, typically I'm nice. I will pay for shipping because I like to work with people. But lately I can't do that because it's like that'll be a giant chunk of the commission.
Shipping has caused me to lose money on commissions more times in the past year than it ever has with anything else. Yeah, it is nuts how expensive shipping has gotten. And like you said, with smaller props and especially as well with foam props, it gets it's a little bit better because you're not paying for as much insane weight. But because and again, so like for me in Canada, I have a Canada Post business account. And so what I'm able to do ahead of time is I'm able to punch in the dimensions of a box. I'm able to punch in the weight of it, the address that it's going to, create a shipping label, and there's a set cost. It will say, okay, it's going to be this much money. You want to pay it now? Yeah, I'll put it on my credit card, print off the label, stick it on. I go and drop it off at the post office. That's it. Yep. But the reason we are not taking, or I'm saying we, like, but the reason that because I'm the same, that at least that I'm not taking international orders anymore, is that if it is, let's say someone came to me and they were like, hey, I live in, the UK or Europe or wherever. I need this thing made. I only want to commission you. I will pay whatever. Then I will say, cool, here's how much the prop is going to cost plus shipping. And I say plus shipping, not plus this much in shipping, because something that would cost $20 to ship to the States will cost $150 to ship to the UK.
Yep. We just both lost a lot of money on an international order.
We just had one because there was a miscommunication that we thought they were US based and they were not. And it ended up, again, I lost money on the commission because I ended up having to ship it off. And then it was, I think, 4 or 5 months later that they reached out and they were like, hey, so it never arrived. And I was like, excuse me. And again, I'm not going to get into that now, but that's there's so much more stress and cost associated with international shipping that definitely, like, look into that. If you're in the States, North America is kind of a good limit unless you have the money for it,
Or
if you're
the
in
big
Europe,
thing, the big thing is insure your packages.
always insure.
Oh,
I don't care about the extra cost. Always insure your package.
Because
Always.
I had one where I like so the it's a good segue into refunding as well.
Yeah.
I don't
Which is hopefully not the last step, but it
know.
sometimes is.
So refunding is something I have never had to do for a disappointed customer. I have never had a disappointed customer. I am very fortunate with that.
Yep.
I seem to apparently deliver with things that people like, and I'm okay with that. I have had to refund because of time constraints, and like if somebody sends me the money, I typically ask for money up front so I can afford the materials and go ahead and get started and block off that time. That is why some people ask for money in advance, so they say, okay, so that way I can block off this time, and I know that you can't back out on me.
Yeah.
Typically, I can't do refunds for something. If somebody says I want this helmet, they send me the money. I immediately order the materials and immediately get started.
Yep.
I cannot refund past that point,
No.
especially once it's built. I cannot refund past that point because I can't get that time and I cannot get that investment
Yeah,
back.
back.
And some people are like, well,
You can't
then
return foam once it's cut.
yeah. Well, and they're like, well, that's kind of shitty of you. And I'm like, no, it's not, because unlike a big company, like for instance, I just had to send my PS5 in because there was a 5-volt shortage on the motherboard. When I send that in, they can replace a part and resell it immediately.
Yep.
If
Yep.
I make a prop and I send it and you're not happy, I can't refund you because I cannot resell that because that is your prop. That is what you asked for.
Yep.
Um,
There's and that's because that's exactly the situation that we discussed earlier with castings and such, which is that sometimes you make a prop that is so niche that there's no way in hell that anyone else is ever going to buy it. Sometimes you're lucky, let's say a client drops out, they say they don't care about the, and they won't be taking it, and it's an Iron Man helmet. You know what I mean? And you can turn around and say, hey, I have this, client dropped out, I'm selling it for this much
I
money.
had a client bail on me because I was like, okay, fine. You know what? Yeah, pay me afterwards. So I built the whole thing and then he never showed up. Bailed. Yeah, so I was out I think I was out like $900.
Yeah.
And that's not including labor. That is just material cost. But that gets in. So refunding, I cannot refund once it's made because that money and time is gone. I can refund if you send me the money and I say, all right, this is your time slot. So typically when I withdraw the money from my prop account, that is to go ahead and start that job. So if someone asks for the Goblin Slayer helmet, they send me the money, but it's booked for next month. Starting in August, I will withdraw that money that is booked. But from then until August, I am allowed to refund because like I've had an incident where somebody was like, okay, hey, I'll book your June slot.
Yeah.
Like, and this was in May. So they sent me the money. Right before June comes up, we had a family incident, and I was like, I'm personally not going to be able to get this done in your time frame. Here's your money back. Here's somebody I will recommend you go try their hand with.
But and that's totally reasonable. If you have not built the prop and you have not, and that's why, like, if you have not started building the prop again, there's a difference between, like you said, that is a beautiful way to do commissions, which is what you often see, which is a monthly schedule. If that's not going to work for you, if your props take longer, make it a bi-monthly, hell, make it a, biannual if you need it, whatever you need. But set yourself a deadline and that date. And if you have, again, if it is before then and you realize I am not going to be able to do this thing and it is your fault, then it's your responsibility to give them that money back because nothing has happened. But if you have finished a prop, if you have done what you have agreed upon and you finished it and they message you and they say, hey, things changed, I'm not getting it anymore. That's not how it works, because that's not how custom ordering works, and that's the thing, is that here's the thing. If
It's again,
they've
it's not
paid for it,
it's like if you order a system, if you hit order, that money comes out of your account before it ships, you say, ah shit, I can't afford that.
yeah,
And you withdraw that money, they can take
exactly.
that same exact system and they can sell it to some other clown.
Yeah.
And that no skin off their back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas on our end, if we have a finished prop and someone tries to drop out, and that's why the thing for me is that if I've finished the prop, and this for me personally, this has never happened, but I know some people that it has happened to. I'm pretty sure it's happened to you as well, Liam. But which is that if I've completely finished the prop and they say, hey, I can't afford it anymore, like refund me, it's like, hey, I can't refund you. I'm still happily going to send you this thing because you paid for it and I finished it. But
but
like,
I do not
I
have the
can't,
money to
yeah,
refund
I
you.
can't give you money. I have built this thing. It is too late. And that's why for me, I will often give a withdrawal date, which is
Yeah.
that unless they are commissioning me and they're like, hey, I need it done in, and this is very rare that I'll accept this, but like if they're like, hey, I need it in 2 weeks, it's middle of July, I need it for August, then it's kind of like, okay, cool, I'm taking the money right away. There's no refunds, because what'd you say?
Don't talk
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
2 weeks.
And,
I'm not going to get into what company.
don't get into
I
that. Don't
just
get into
I
that. Don't
just
get
had
into
a
that.
company come after me and they
Yeah.
needed something in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And it's just, it's, it's and I wouldn't take that, but like that would be one of those situations where I'm like, all right, right away, that's it. But other than that, usually it'll be okay, send me the money. I will be starting it on this day. You have until then to change your mind.
Yeah.
And usually that's a short amount of time for me. Like I will not give them a month to decide because
Yeah.
I usually start a project within 3 days of
Uh,
it being confirmed.
My withdrawal date is when I order the materials.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And that's why,
but
and that's what, so
I
for me,
tell
and
them,
that's
like,
why I'll let them know. Where it's like,
somebody message me in the next 45 minutes.
yep.
It's like, I'm going to commission you for this. I will order the materials by Sunday.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. And that's why I said, like, for me, it's usually within 3 days. And so I will say, okay, listen, we've confirmed this. And it's basically like usually you've got 48 hours to change your mind. Otherwise, I will be, once I've received the money and it's been confirmed and such, I'm ordering. That's it. That's your cutoff date.
Yeah.
And here's the fact of the matter is sometimes it's very rare, especially because even when someone's like, if it's crappy because like we're people too, right? We get it that
Yeah.
if it turns into a situation where you thought you were going to be able to afford this helmet and you over budgeted and you didn't realize that you actually need the extra $300 or whatever it is, I feel bad, but I can't do anything about that because I'm making a living as well. I will still send you the helmet. And because
Yeah.
of that, and again, I'm just saying the helmet in this case, the sword, whatever it is. But because of that, that's why people tend not to be upset. They're usually more angry with themselves in that situation than they are with us
Now,
for saying, "Hey, man, I can't give you I can't give you the money back. I finished this piece." Whereas uh, I've also never had what you mentioned, which is that I've never had the client who's like, who gets it and they're like, this is awful. I hate it. I want a refund. That
yeah.
has never happened for me personally.
And that's another thing too. I know like a lot of what we talk about sounds maybe a little cutthroat.
Mhm.
It doesn't need it's not intended as such. Like I will typically work with somebody, even if
Yeah.
if somebody wants a professional quality and I can tell they're really passionate about it, and they come in a couple like I'll say even a couple $100 under budget. I will most times make that work
Yeah.
because like, and I'll tell them I was like, look, it's okay if you're not quite meeting my budget, but I like you and I can tell you're probably going to shop with me again. So
Yeah.
I'll cut you a deal on this. And so being nice helps too. Like if you come at me and
Oh, yeah. Be decent. Yeah.
yeah, if you come at me and you're
On
like,
both
okay,
ends. On both ends. Be decent. Yeah.
that's why I always ask, what's your budget? So I can see if I can help you out. And again, typically I will take a little bit of a, like, if I don't make extra profit, fine by me if I made you happy. Like
Yeah.
that's typically what so I typically, I don't charge to get rich. I don't like, I still don't make enough money to do this full time. Um, so it's something to remember. It's like typically, especially if you're going through me, I'm not going to charge you something that's going to break your bank, and I'm more than likely willing to work with you. Like I said, typically I like to do upfront. Like if I give you this price, I want that upfront.
Yeah.
If it's something like especially if it's somebody that I've worked with before. They're like, I really want this, but I also have, this kind of bill coming up. I'll break it up for you. I will
Yeah.
absolutely break it up for you. And
Oh,
that's typically how it goes.
I'm doing that with the commission right now. And again, the guy was super chill and he basically just said, "Hey, I've got some extenuating circumstances going on." He explained them to me. It wasn't like he didn't say extenuating circumstances. He actually told me what was going on. It was like,
Yeah,
"Can I wait
but
to pay you the other half of this? I can send you this much right now, and I will send you the other half before you ship it out and such. So like it won't be
yeah.
a worry." And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like that's totally fine. We're people. That's, the stuff happens. But I think the last thing that I want to say, just because you mentioned the whole, like, we might sound a little cutthroat, that I think is really important if you are going to get into prop making, you have to respect yourself, your time, and know your own value. Because if you go into this not being confident about your rates, being confident about the work you are selling and everything, then you are never going to succeed. You'll never have a happy client. You'll never have a happy commission or project that is seen through, because that is why I didn't sell props for the longest time, because I was never fully satisfied with them. And that is a thing that I know Liam and I both agree on, which is that, quality control is a word for a reason. I will not ship out a piece that I have been paid for if it is not up to a certain quality that I associate with myself.
Well, and that's
But
kind of
but
like, it doesn't leave my door unless I know that the client's going to be happy.
Exactly. But the flip side of that is that if I have put that into it, and that work into it, and the client says, you look like a bug. And the client says, you know, I'm not happy. It doesn't look like what you promised. I want a refund. I know it passed a certain quality control. I know that that I respect my time, and I was worth the money that I charged. And I'm having so much trouble right now keeping a straight face saying this. You look like a Martian from a certain series that we enjoy. And I know that I'm worth the amount that I cost and my time is. So I'm not going to feel bad in saying I can't give you a refund. Whereas 5 years ago, if I'd taken a commission and someone said it's not happy, I would have been like, "You're right. I'm sorry. Here's all the money
Shit,
back."
I'm not worthy.
Yeah, "You're right. I'm sorry. Here's all the money back." So if you're
Here's
gonna
all the
get
money
it,
back and in advance.
here's all my money back. Yeah, here's my credit card. But that's just really important. Is if you're gonna get into this, make sure you're at a point where you are proud of the work you are looking to sell, and that you have confidence in your own ability, because it makes every single step of the process so much easier. How much is it going to cost? You know your worth. Is the process of it, you're good at what you're doing. Is it gonna, you know what I mean? Like, is the client gonna be happy? Well, I'm happy with it, so the client should be happy as well. The client's not happy, I know that I made something good. So I think that about sums it up. We're probably going to wrap up now. I'm going for about an hour. But yeah, I'd say, was there anything else you wanted to mention, Liam, regarding commissions and such?
I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the questions that I typically get.
Yeah.
Um, and again, we're not the preeminent experts. Like,
No.
again, we've both worked in a professional setting, so I do feel confident, like,
Yeah.
sharing my knowledge with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I hope it does help
This is
some
what is
people.
working for us currently.
This podcast is for both consumer and crafter,
Yep.
because at the same time, Kamui Cosplay actually did a really good video about it too. She's a little bit more like
About
stuck.
costs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's a little bit more like
if you
in
have
your
not,
face about it.
yeah,
Like,
if you have not watched Kamui Cosplay's video on how much she charges for commissions, it is phenomenal and very blunt. 100% you should watch that video, because it is literally them being like, "Hey, this thing, if could cost $50,000 if I want it to, because of, if I charge minimum wage." Like it's worth a watch for sure if you haven't yet, both as a consumer and as a crafter, to kind of understand, like, oh, that's why things sometimes cost the way they do.
yeah,
But yeah, if there's any other questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, or join our Discord and throw them in there. Again, we're always active in there chatting about stuff like that, and many other things. All that's in the description. But yeah, if there's anything else that you'd like us to talk about, again, we are going to do another podcast. We're going to record very soon. I'm getting a new mic.
Record this weekend, honestly.
Yeah, I'm getting a new mic. Liam's gonna get a new mic eventually, and it'll be a good time. But if there's anything else you want us to,
PlayStation headset mic doesn't do it for you.
it was better than your other one. I'm very excited to talk more. If there's anything in particular you'd like to talk about, let us know. And until then, you can find me on Instagram at make_a_prop. And you can find Liam.
That's it. And I'll see you guys.
You can find Liam. Yeah. At Ashen Warrior Props on Instagram. And we will talk to you in the next one. Bye.